Folklore, strange tales, mysteries and hauntings have long been connected with the road network in the UK. From the rough tracks traversed by our most ancient ancestors, to the fine Roman constructions we still journey over, and the multi-laned behemoths of modern travel, ghostly goings-on crisscross our entire road network. Supernatural soldiers, haunted hitchhikers, phantom lorries and accident victims doomed to repeat their final cursed excursions. Each stretch of road harbours its own spectral secrets. Buckle up, adjust your mirrors, and join me as I take a trip along some of these sinister roads and explore the ghostly legends that haunt our journeys. A crossroads is more than just a space where two roads meet and intersect. At Crossroads, gallows once stood, and criminals, those found guilty of witchcraft, gypsies and beggars were buried beneath these areas of unconsecrated ground. A boundary burial was cheap, and people thought the location would confuse any ghost that tried to return to this world. Suicides were also buried at Crossroads, sometimes with a stake through their body, a horrifying practice that only changed in 1823, when a new act allowed them a private church burial, but only at night and without a Christian service. It's appalling to think of those who were in such mental distress being punished after death in this way. And no surprise to learn of restless spirits at locations like the Boy's Grave near Newmarket or Dead Man's Corner in Yoxford. Betty's Grave, near Poulton in Gloucestershire, is the site where a woman variously reported to have been a witch, a suicide, and the innocent victim of a mob is buried. Her troubled ghost returns if flowers are not kept on the low mound, terrifying passing drivers as she appears in the road without warning. One of the most well-known stretches of haunted and potentially cursed roads in England is the Stocksbridge Bypass in South Yorkshire. Opening on Friday the 13th of May 1988, an inauspicious date that should have given a hint of what was to come, this 5-mile-long bypass saw 25 fatalities in its first 14 years. Tragic incidents and collisions still occur. But it is the tales of dancing children and a hovering, hooded figure that call to those with an interest in the paranormal. Late one night in 1987, while the bypass was still under construction, 2 security guards saw children laughing, singing and dancing in a circle under an electricity pylon at the site. The guards approached the group, but the children faded away before their eyes. Scared and confused, the guards then noticed a large hooded figure standing on a bridge above them. Turning their car's lights on what they assumed was a man, the beams shone straight through and showed a misty form hovering above the ground. In 1994, Michael Aspel presented an episode of Strange But True about this road and the myriad sightings of a ghostly cowled form, which even appeared to, and terrified, 2 police officers. The transparent, cloaked shape circled their patrol car, and when they tried to drive away, the engine wouldn't start until the apparition vanished. Is this a monk, raised from his rest by the carving out of earth when the new road was being built? Or is it more malevolent? A darker entity? A dangerous echo of something disturbing from the past, something that should be allowed to remain a mystery? Equally mysterious are the stories of the infamous unseen or hairy hands, seizing control of vehicles and making them swerve off the road in East Devon. In early 1921, Dr. Helby, the medical officer at Princetown Prison, was driving along what is now the B3212 between Postbridge and Two Bridges when he started struggling with the steering of his motorcycle before losing control. Sadly, he was killed in the resulting crash. Several people then suffered injuries after being thrown from a coach, after seeing the driver fight with the steering. Another man who crashed his motorcycle claimed he felt two large, muscular, hairy hands close over his own and force him into the side of the road in spite of his resistance. Many suspected a malign spirit was responsible, though one newspaper correspondent thought that the cause could be magnetic rocks on Dartmoor, sending out currents and shocking motorists. In 2003, in his book Supernatural Dartmoor, Michael Williams recounted that his friend and fellow author Rufus Endell had experienced the same phenomenon, fighting for control of his car against a pair of terrifyingly strong, disembodied hands. Skeptics say the cause of these accidents is motorists driving too fast on a road with a dangerous camber. But that doesn't explain the appearance of these phantom hands, which show a specific animosity to motor vehicles. Perhaps they belong to the victim of an earlier collision, trapped in this realm, bound to the site of their death by a powerful, dangerous desire for retribution. Spirits bound to our roads by some unfulfilled fate or traumatic event may account for the following tale. In October 1979, as Roy Fulton was driving home from a darts match in Leighton Buzzard, he encountered a young hitchhiker near the village of Stanbridge. The man had a long face and a pale complexion, short curly hair, and was wearing dark trousers. Roy decided to stop and offer him a lift. The young man opened the van door and got in, but didn't say anything, and simply pointed along the road when Roy asked where he wanted to go. After a mile of silent driving, Roy turned to offer the man a cigarette, but the passenger seat was empty. The hitchhiker had vanished from the moving van without opening the door. Roy's experience with this mysterious, spectral hitchhiker is not, it seems, unusual. A chattier young man named Tom has been picked up by the entrance to the Birkenhead Tunnel in Merseyside, disappearing once his lift reaches the exit. A weary old woman asks for a lift to Bramhope, West Yorkshire, but vanishes before she can get into the car. A distressed girl in white gets into cars on the A167 County Durham, but slowly fades into nothing a few miles down the road. And one of our most famous vanishing hitchhiker stories occurs at Bluebell Hill, a steep stretch of road between Maidstone and Chatham. Since the late 1960s, motorists have reported seeing a young woman at the side of this road, sometimes running out in front of them and sometimes accepting a lift before disappearing. 2 drivers have even believed themselves to have hit and injured this girl, slamming on their brakes, only to find no trace of her in the road and no damage to their cars. The appearance of this apparition, young, upset and wearing what could be a wedding or bridesmaid's dress, means that she has been linked with a fatal accident which occurred on Bluebell Hill on the 19th of November 1965. Suzanne Brown, Patricia Ferguson, Judith Lingham and Gillian Burchett were in a terrible crash when their Ford Cortina collided with a Jaguar. Judith was pronounced dead at the scene, and Suzanne and Patricia died later in hospital. The young women had been travelling back from Suzanne's hen night, as she was due to be married the next day. What an appalling tragedy for everyone involved. Is it any surprise that such an event sends its dreadful echoes out over the years, whatever your views on the existence or otherwise of ghosts? And it isn't just the spirits of people that appear to travellers on our roads. It seems that ghostly vehicles can also be found trapped in repeating loops of history, like the phantom lorry on Knightlow Hill, a stretch of road on the A45 between Rugby and Coventry. Blamed for a number of accidents in even the best of weather, motorists kept reporting that this lorry would drive straight at them lights blazing, forcing them off the road before vanishing. The 2nd of March 1954 was a dangerous night. It was freezing cold, foggy, and snowing when a truck lost control and overturned. As did 4 subsequent lorries that, unable to stop in time in the drifting snow, piled into the immobilised vehicle and completely blocked the road. Local Constable PC George Forsyth lived near Knightlow Hill and heard the awful noise of the impacts. On arriving at the scene, he was happy to find no one seriously injured, but he had to improvise a warning for other road users. Bonfires were built and set alight approximately 300 feet from each side of the wreckage, and some of the drivers had red lamps and stood by the fires directing traffic away from the blocked road. Suddenly, PC Forsyth heard a shout and saw the lights of an old-fashioned lorry approaching at speed. Seeming to ignore the lamps and fires and shouted warnings, the tarpaulin-covered truck barreled towards them before passing through the mangled vehicles already in the road and disappearing from sight. These chilling tales and eerie encounters we've explored are just a glimpse into the haunted roads that crisscross the UK. From spectral hitchhikers and phantom vehicles to restless spirits bound by tragic fates, these stories remind us that the roadways we travel are steeped in history and mystery. As you navigate your own journeys, remember that you may not be alone on those dark, deserted stretches. The next time you find yourself driving along at night, keep an eye on your mirrors and a steady grip on the wheel. You never know when you might encounter one of these ghostly travellers, eternally wandering the roads in search of peace. Until our next journey into the unknown, stay curious, stay safe, and beware of the shadows on the road.